Good Thursday morning and welcome back to Commentators Corner. Tyler Reedy and Brendan Preisman here with you as we're really into a busy sports week now. We've decided to go with 2 episodes here at the end of this week. We've got this one this Thursday morning, then tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. So myself and Brendan, very excited to be with you. We've got a lot to cover for sure.
That we do. Yeah, this episode right here is the football-specific episode. We're going to go high school, college, and professional football, maybe a little bit about the tennis team as well. State starts today. Good luck, guys. And then tomorrow is basically throwing in the rest, the MLB playoffs, divisional round wrapping up, I believe, tonight and tomorrow, so we can talk about that. NHL season started last night, and the NBA season starts next Tuesday, so definitely a lot to talk about. Let's just get right into it.
Yeah, and one more thing to mention before we get into prep football. We've got cross-country districts down in Lincoln today as well. You mentioned state tennis, so it's a big week for prep sports. And tomorrow night, football team will be down at Foundation Field to take on Papillion La Vista South. Titans are 3-4 this season, but that record has a lot of tough losses. They've lost to Westside, they've lost to Gretna, a couple other pretty difficult opponents on that schedule, but that's a team that's brought back basically their entire offense from last year with Brady Fitzpatrick, who's over 1,000 yards passing this year, also a solid running quarterback, and then Devin Jones, who's not too shabby of a running back himself. But if Prep can defend well, especially late in games, especially like they did in the Millard West game, and run the ball with Marty Brown, that's one thing that Papio South has struggled with a lot this year is run defense. Dom Rizak ran for over 300 against them this year, so Prep run game should be able to have a pretty solid night, and as long as the defense can hold off that Titans offense, which can get pretty fiery, Junior J should be able to take care of business, you would think.
Yeah, Prep's on a 4-game winning streak right now, and their average points per game, that streak is almost 40. Average points given up is about 16. So, yeah, you mentioned Marty Brown. He's 845 yards on 134 carries, 13 rushing touchdowns, multiple touchdowns in each of their last 4 games. So he's good, but the whole rushing offense is good. They've gone over 235 rushing yards in each of the games they've played during this streak, and that'll probably continue against a Papio team that, as you said, is iffy against the run defense. And then Prep's defense, they're very good at forcing turnovers, and that could be interesting because they forced 3 on the first 3 drives last week for Lincoln Northeast. Prep's defense did, but Brady Fitzpatrick, 87 of 159 on the year, 1,003 yards and 10 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. He is very good at not letting the defense get the ball. So Prep's going to have their work cut out for them on defense and trying to get some takeaways. If they can do that, they can probably win the game. If not, though, the Titans might have a chance to pull the upset.
Yeah, I think there's a great chance for Prep going into a matchup with Lincoln East, who can be a very interesting team with a high ceiling with Noah Walters at quarterback. Lincoln East can be a tough team even if they're on the fringe of the top 10. Prep will play them next Friday, and I think the Junior J's offense will definitely need an opportunity to really get things warmed up against, not a bad opponent in Papio South, but a team that's good enough to play with anybody on any given week, which they've done at times this season. So if Prep can come out, have a strong offensive performance, build up plenty of momentum going into Lincoln East, I think they'll be in a really strong position to finish out the regular season well with maybe just 2 losses and go into the playoffs as a top 6, maybe even a top 4 team.
Yeah, that's certainly going to be interesting, but as you said, it has to start with this Papio South game. If they're not able to get a convincing win, that might cast a bit of a shadow over not just the Lincoln East game next week, but also over the playoffs. It might get in the team's heads a little bit. If we can't really beat Papio South convincingly, how bad are we going to play against a team like a Millard South or a Bellevue West? So it starts tomorrow night. I think they're going to be able to do it, but that's the beauty of football. You never know.
Yeah, absolutely. Any given week. Speaking of any given week, it was quite the week in college football last Saturday. A lot of upsets, top-ranked type games, and Alabama losing to Texas A&M was the big story. Number 1 team in the nation, falling 41-38 in a shootout to the unranked Aggies. It snapped a 100-game Alabama winning streak against unranked opponents. A&M winning it on a last-second field goal. Number 2 Georgia took over the number 1 spot after they steamrolled 18th ranked Auburn 34-10. Bulldogs defense only allowing 5.5 points per game through 6 weeks. That's pretty incredible. Top team in the land for sure. They take on Kentucky, the 11th ranked team in the nation, and they are 22.5 point favorites against the top 15 team. You'll like this one. Not. Texas losing to Oklahoma 55-48 after leading 28-7 at the end of the first quarter. Number 6 Oklahoma, Texas was number 21. They dropped down to 25, but I was at your house watching the first quarter of that game, and it was like a dream start for the Longhorns, scoring on the first play of the game, forcing turnovers, and then it all just fell apart.
I wouldn't say it fell apart. I would say that Oklahoma and the coaching staff finally realized, wait a minute, not only are we like just as talented as this Texas team, our quarterback is an idiot. What if we put in a quarterback who's not an idiot? So then they put in Caleb Williams, and then he started throwing the ball and running the ball, and Texas's defense started forgetting how to tackle. I don't blame this on the offense at all. Putting up 48 points on Oklahoma is no small feat, but the defense just wasn't able to get stops when they needed, and that was the deciding game. And Oklahoma almost led to our What Is Happening segment this week. We'll get to that either later in this podcast or tomorrow, depending on what sport it's from. But their media availability has been canceled until their game because supposedly some of their student reporters from the student newspaper were watching practice from a public building with binoculars. They saw that Caleb Williams, the backup who came in during the Texas game, was getting more first-team reps than Spencer Rattler, the previous starter, got an interview from Rattler's dad, who said that he was still staying at Oklahoma, committed to Oklahoma, and then published a story about this. So now Oklahoma has announced that there will be no media availability until after their game this Saturday. So probably a quarterback controversy. In my opinion, it's not really that much of a controversy that they couldn't move the ball with Spencer Rattler and they could with Caleb Williams, but you never know. There were some other pretty good games too. Wake Forest beat Syracuse in overtime to remain unbeaten and the top seed in the ACC. That was fun. Notre Dame survived another game by the skin of their teeth. That seems to be a bit of a theme this year for the Fighting Irish.
Yep, and solved nothing about the quarterback position either. We started the game with Jack Cohn, as expected. He was not good. The offense went nowhere the first couple drives. Brought in Tyler Buckner, the freshman, who's supposed to be the future of the position for the Irish, and he led a couple scoring drives, and it felt like Notre Dame might be beginning a new era at quarterback in Virginia Tech in that second quarter, but then the offense sputtered under Buckner. Cohn comes back in, and he leads the game-winning drive late to win it 32-29, so I don't even know at this point.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really does, but pretty solid win for them against a tough ACC team. Michigan beats Nebraska, so the Huskers another close loss to another very solid team, and they were up pretty late in the game with a chance to win, but they just couldn't finish it off. Michigan got the game winner with 1:24 left. It looks like what happened is Huskers just got stopped at the end, and that was it for Michigan. A lot of controversy around that game, as there often is in Nebraska, but at the very least, this team's looking competitive again with those solid teams. Michigan State proved that they're going to be an interesting team to watch as the college football playoff debate heats up, beating Rutgers 31-13. That means that the Nebraska loss to them also looks a lot better. And then in the biggest Big Ten game of the week, Iowa beats Penn State, but a lot of controversy surrounding that game. Penn State up 17-3 when starting quarterback Sean Clifford had to leave the game with an injury. Iowa outscored them the rest of the way, 20-3 from there. So, sure, Hawkeyes still unbeaten, 6-0 now, 3-0 in the conference with a very, very nice-looking win over Penn State, but it does have that caveat, so you have to wonder whether the playoff committee might hold that against them if, say, I don't know, an Oklahoma State team with one loss ends up coming into the playoff, because that still could happen. But you never know. Cincinnati still looks like a playoff team, 52-3 over Temple. Ohio State has returned to form with a 66-17 win over Maryland. Really, college football kind of returned to the expected this week, I'd say.
Yeah, and Iowa, you were saying Penn State win could have that caveat. We know for sure that defense is legit. They haven't allowed more than 20 points in their first 6 games of the season. So Iowa, just about any team they play, aside from maybe Georgia, potentially Cincinnati with that high-powered offense, they're going to hold them low enough that they can outscore them with that offense, which isn't totally impressive by any means, but can certainly be enough to beat a top-flight team. One more big-time game to cover from last week. 17th-ranked Ole Miss down to 13th-ranked Arkansas, 52-51. There were 68 combined points in the second half alone.
Yay.
And over 1,200 yards of total offense in that SEC matchup.
41 total just in the fourth quarter.
Man.
So here's what happens. It's tied at 31. Ole Miss immediately scores less than 2 minutes gone by. Then Arkansas scores in about 2 minutes, so it's tied at 38. Ole Miss scores in 2 minutes, 45-38. And then almost nobody scores. And then with 1:22 left, KJ Jefferson ties it for Arkansas. Then 15 seconds later, Matt Corral throws a 68-yard pass to Braylon Sanders, 2-play, 75-yard, 15-second drive, and Ole Miss takes back the lead. Then Arkansas, 9-play, 75-yard drive, scores a touchdown at the gun, but the 2-point conversion is no good, and Ole Miss gets the win. Matt Corral looking like maybe a Heisman candidate so far this year. Second in QBR with 89.9, 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, no interceptions on the year. So he's a guy to look out for. Bijan Robinson, Kenneth Walker of Michigan State. The Heisman race is looking very interesting. We'll probably dive deeper into that next week.
Yeah, absolutely. The front runner, Spencer Rattler, is completely
He's not the front runner.
Oh, no. The preseason front runner has completely fallen off. So, yeah, anybody's game, like you said.
Like Bijan Robinson.
Like Bijan Robinson, maybe.
Hey. Welcome.
Moving on next week, college football, not as many ranked matchups. Just 2 of them, or 3 of them rather. Nope, just 2 of them. Yep. Misread that. Starting with Oklahoma State and Texas, that's 12 versus 25. Should be another shootout down in the Big 12. And then Kentucky and Georgia, I hinted at this one earlier. That's a number 11 versus number 1. And Georgia, despite playing a top 12 opponent, is still favored by 22.5 points. That just speaks to how dominant they have been this season.
Sorry, Kentucky, but that game's not going to go too well.
And then some other pretty solid matchups in the SEC. No other ranked games, but 17th-ranked Arkansas hosts Auburn, who has just fallen out of the top 25 after the big loss to Georgia. And then 20th-ranked Florida goes to Death Valley to take on LSU. And then 13th-ranked Ole Miss, after their victory over the Razorbacks, takes on Tennessee in Knoxville. So somewhat quieter week in college football, but definitely still be on upset alert.
I think Byu Baylor could be kind of an interesting game. That's 19 versus unranked. BYU's 19th. But Baylor's favored, according to ESPN, by 6.5 points. BYU's won their last 4 after starting the season with they won their first 5. Lost last week to Boise State, 26-17. But they've got wins over Arizona State and Utah already on their schedule this year. And meanwhile, Baylor, just that one loss, they beat Iowa State back when we thought Iowa State was going to be decent, 31-29. Narrow loss to Oklahoma State, 24-14, currently coming off a 45-20 win over West Virginia. So both those teams pretty interesting to watch. That could be a fun game if you're bored at 2:30.
All right, moving on to the NFL. Our game predictions have taken a massive swing as I have a 1-game lead over Brendan for the first time this season. We were even through the first 4 weeks of the season, but after week 5, I went 11-5. You went 10-6. So we'll see if you can pull a game back. Starting with tonight's game, Thursday Night Football, Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. And I don't think you can pick against Tampa Bay. They're coming off a dominant win over Miami. Eagles got a pretty solid comeback win in Carolina last week, but that offense, you know what you're going to get from them. That's about 17 to 27 points per game. That's just not enough to beat Tampa Bay. I've got $31-23.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. You can't really pick against the Buccaneers. I mean, I can. I'm not going to.
But you won't, yep.
I'm going to go 27-14 Tampa Bay. I like their defense, and I think that against the Eagles, Jalen Hurts is solid, but he's still a young quarterback, a little mistake-prone, and I think that Tampa Bay is going to do a good job at forcing him into those types of mistakes.
We got another London game this week.
Why can't we give the British good football?
No kidding. Last week they got the Jets and the Falcons. This week they get two more proverbially tanking teams, the Miami Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville's offense with Trevor Lawrence, I think, is slowly starting to get there. They got beat pretty badly by Tennessee last week, but I think Lawrence is looking a little bit better every week, and Miami coming off an absolute bludgeoning at the hands of Tampa Bay a week ago, and now they've got to go to London, so I don't think that's a very favorable turnaround for them. I got Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence getting his first NFL victory, 27-20. You got the same
That
thing?
wasn't very smart of you.
Oh, okay.
Here's the thing. We know that Urban Meyer likes his partying.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been to a British pub yet, but
goodness.
he's going. And
Boy.
I think his Saturday night in Britain is going to be very enjoyable. And I think his Sunday morning will be absolutely horrid. Tua's practicing now. I don't know what that means, but I have a feeling that this game will be almost devoid of offense. I'll give all you viewers a hint. Save your Sunday mornings. There's so much better stuff you could be doing than watching this. Like, please sleep in. Just make sure your lineup is set on Saturday night because there is nothing redeemable about this game. I've got Dolphins 16-14.
Good grief. All right, so there's our first point of difference in Week 6.
All right, so now we're going to be tied next time we're doing this.
All right. Green Bay and Chicago in an NFC North rivalry matchup. Packers got the win in overtime despite some serious kicking woes in Cincinnati last week.
That was fun to watch.
Bears got a big win. The defense showed up in a 20-9 victory over the Raiders last week, who are now a mess with the John Gruden situation. But I think the Packers will win it pretty close, 23-20 over Chicago.
They're going to win it, but I don't think it'll be that close. I've got 31-20 Green Bay. I just think that the Bears' defense, sure, you could do that against Derek Carr, but can you do that against Aaron Rodgers? I think the answer is no.
Cincinnati and Detroit. Bengals had the overtime loss to Green Bay last week. Detroit had another heartbreak, took the 17-16 lead over the Vikings on the road with under a minute to go. But then the Vikings got down the field just far enough to kick a 50-plus yard field goal as time expired to win it. So the Lions remain winless, and I think that's going to continue against a pretty high-powered Cincinnati offense. Bengals win 31-24.
I disagree.
Really?
Yes, I think this is the week. I just feel incredibly sad for the Lions. Like, do you know how many deities you have to have angered for the Vikings to beat you with a field goal? That is not supposed to happen. It's supposed to be the other way around. Vikings drive down, have a chance at the game-winning field goal, but miss it, and then all of Minnesota turns to hard liquor for the next week. But I just think this is the week. Yes, the Lions aren't as talented as a lot of the other teams they've played, but they've been in almost all their games. They were a doink off the crossbar away from beating the Ravens. I think they can beat the Bengals 27-24.
All right, so that's two different games. You're taking a shot with that one this week.
So now I'm winning by 1.
Okay. Or I'm ahead by 3.
Or you're not.
Imagine that.
Yeah, I can't because it's not going to happen.
Okay, AFC South, Indianapolis hosting Houston. Colts had the 25-6 lead over the Ravens at the end of the third quarter last week and blew it. Lamar Jackson came back to win 31-25 in overtime. So Colts coming off a bad week, but fortunately they get a very bad team coming to town to try and turn things around, and I think they will against Houston, 27-17.
Yeah, going up 25-6 against Davis Mills is a little safer than going up 25-6 against Lamar Jackson. I've got 24-10 Colts. That game similar to the Dolphins-Jaguars game. If you've got something better to do, then do it, because that's not a very good-looking game.
Rams at Giants. Rams got the victory over Seattle last week on Thursday Night Football. Robert Woods had a massive game with 12 catches for 150 yards. Giants are in some trouble with Daniel Jones suffering a concussion last week against Dallas. Saquon Barkley out for a few weeks with a sprained ankle. So should be a pretty easy one to pick. Rams 30, Giants 16, as I just don't know how that New York offense is going to look now with a lot of their star players out.
Yeah, I've got 27-17 Rams. And you didn't even mention the fact that the Rams offense is better than the Giants offense even when everybody's healthy. Yep. So, yeah, Rams 27-17.
Vikings Panthers, I think this is going to be a really good game. Minnesota, we'll see if they can get Dalvin Cook back in the fold. Coming off the late victory over Detroit last week. Carolina trying to get Christian McCaffrey back on the field. He's 50-50 with his chances to play, trying to come away from that hamstring injury he suffered a few weeks ago in Houston. But I think the Panthers will bounce back. Sam Darnold had an awful game last week, but I think he'll be better, especially if he can get McCaffrey back. I'm going to throw it out right now, though. I think the game hinges on McCaffrey's availability. If he plays, Carolina wins. If he doesn't, I don't think they do. So with a hamstring injury and 50-50, I think he probably won't because that's a pretty tough injury to come back from. So I've got Minnesota 27-24. You got Carolina?
I do.
All right.
I do. I think that the Vikings probably gave something up to win on a field goal, and I think that there are going to be immediate consequences for that. I think it starts against Carolina. I think that Sam Darnold returns to the form he showed throughout the first couple of weeks because the Vikings defense really is not great. I've got 31-27 Panthers.
This isn't a primetime game, but
it should be.
In my opinion, it's the game of the week. The Chargers and the Ravens. L.A. got a crazy win. Justin Herbert going for 5 total touchdowns last week and a 49-42 victory over Cleveland. Baltimore obviously had the crazy come-from-behind overtime win over Indianapolis. But Justin Herbert, man, he's an MVP candidate. Lamar Jackson's up there too, but that Chargers offense just looks like a completely different animal this season. The defense can do enough to win games as well. And,
can they?
Yeah.
The Chargers?
Yeah.
What?
They forced turnovers in the Kansas City game. They've got Joey Bosa. They've got Derwin James. They have stars on the defensive side of the ball. Kenneth Murray as well.
They gave up 42 to the Browns just last week.
Well, that's going to happen. You'll get in some shootouts. But are we still saying the Cleveland defense is bad? Like, they're still a top flight unit.
They gave up 47 to the Chargers.
Everybody has some bad weeks.
Oh, goodness.
Chargers 31-26.
Ravens 45-42.
45-42.
45-42.
Oh my gosh.
This is going to be the game of the week.
Whoa.
This is going to be the best game of the week. There's going to be some offense. There's going to be some MVP moments. It's going to be fun, and the Ravens are going to win.
Chiefs and the Washington football team. Kansas City is 2-3 after a bad loss to Buffalo at home last week. Desperately trying to find a way to get the defense on track and really get the whole team back on track. Offense has been sloppy as well. Washington had a tough loss at home to New Orleans, but Kansas City has been a better team on the road than at home, actually, the last few seasons, and I think they'll bounce back just fine. Washington football team still waiting for their defense to emerge, and I don't think it will. Kansas City 35-24.
Yeah, I think this is going to be fairly close because neither team really has a defense almost at all. But I think the Chiefs are finally due for a win, and I think they're going to get it against the football team 37-28.
Cleveland and Arizona. Cardinals had an interesting win last week against the 49ers. Kyler Murray came back down to earth after his ridiculous start, but defense held off Trey Lance, and Arizona able to get the 17-10 victory. Cleveland, of course, had the shootout loss to L.A., but I think they'll bounce back. I think that Cleveland run game is the best in football, quite frankly. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt went off last week, and I think they will again at home against Arizona, and the Browns will win 31-23.
Yeah. Wait, no.
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 No. Wait, I'm sorry. I've got the Cardinals remaining unbeaten.
Okay.
I think that Browns defense is closer to a dumpster fire than a legitimate NFL unit. Cardinals 31-24.
So this week could be an absolute mess now. We are differing in 5 different games.
And we're not done. We've got 4 more to go.
Yeah, no kidding. Raiders-Broncos in the AFC West. Vegas, with their game last week, the 20-9 loss to Chicago, and then the John Gruden situation. I don't know how they're going to come out and play in Denver on Sunday, but I think it's going to be enough to get the job done. I still think that offense can do enough to win games. I think it's better than that of Denver, but Raiders are going to fall off a little bit here after their hot start. I think the Chargers are the very clear front runner in the AFC West at this point, but Raiders will win 2019 this week.
Yeah, I've got Raiders 23-14. Derek Carr is slightly better than Teddy Bridgewater, and I think that might be enough. Raiders have a real bad vibe about them. They didn't have a great vibe even before all the John Gruden stuff. They definitely don't now. 23-14.
Cowboys at Patriots. I think Dallas, with that offense, the reemergence of the offensive line and their run game with Zeke Elliott. I think the Cowboys have proven themselves as on the top tier in the NFC with teams like Tampa Bay and the Rams, and I think they'll continue to roll, have a pretty solid defensive game against Mac Jones and the Patriots, and they'll win 24-13.
Yep, Cowboys over Patriots because, the Cowboys are Super Bowl contenders. The Patriots are not. 28-7.
Seahawks at Steelers. We have no idea how the Seattle offense is going to look with Geno Smith at quarterback, as Russell Wilson is going to miss some time after that finger injury. I do still think Seattle will be able to move the ball pretty well. They've got a lot of weaponry in terms of Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. Geno Smith led a couple okay drives last week. Seattle still has plenty of talent on offense, but Pittsburgh's going to win.
Oh, thank goodness. I was worried
24-21.
I was worried there for a second.
Ben Roethlisberger showed last week against Denver that he's not totally done yet. He still has some pretty solid juice left in that arm, and I think he'll be able to do enough with the help of Najee Harris to beat Seattle 24-21.
Yep, 20-17 Pittsburgh. That's, again, not going to be a great game to watch, especially with Wilson out, but it's going to be close. That's for sure.
And finally, the Monday night game, Buffalo at Tennessee. Tennessee coming off the win over Jacksonville. Derrick Henry continues to be, quite frankly, the best running back in the National Football League this year, as he went for 3 touchdowns, 100-plus yards.
Is.
And then Buffalo got the big victory over Kansas City. Josh Allen is an MVP candidate along with Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, those guys. And I think it'll continue. Buffalo offense is hot, and they're going to keep rolling 38-24. I just don't think Tennessee has the offensive firepower outside of Henry to keep up.
Yeah, Buffalo is just slightly more explosive than Tennessee, and that's going to be enough. Bills 30-21.
So that's it for the NFL. We are different in 5 different games, so keep an eye out for Sunday afternoon, and could be very interesting to see how things play out. I have a 1-game lead on Brendan, but that thing could be changing by quite a bit. It's going to change by at least 1 since we're different in an odd number of games. So.
Yeah, you could have a 4-game deficit by this time next week. You probably won't, but I actually wouldn't be surprised if we're tied again.
Yeah.
I really wouldn't. That just seems how this season's working out.
Yep, you'd have to win 3. I'd have to win 2. So we'll see how things play out. Join us again tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. We'll be talking about the NBA and the NHL. NHL already started its season Wednesday night. They've played 7 total games so far through the first 2 nights of the season. Actually, it started on Tuesday night, 5 more games last night on Wednesday. But we'll talk about the NBA, talk about the NHL. We'll have our What Is Happening segment as well. And, yeah, that's it. Pretty short episode today talking about football, but more to come tomorrow afternoon. Anything else, Brendan?
Well, yep, sorry that we're not doing the What Is Happening today. Make sure to tune in tomorrow. Big news out of prep. Senior Parker Mooney committed to Augustana University for baseball. So congratulations to you, Parker. Good luck at Augustana next year. And as always, thank you all for tuning in, and we will hopefully see you all again tomorrow.
Yep, tomorrow afternoon, 3 o'clock, talking about the winter sports. So that'll do it for this episode number 8 of Commentators Corner. Number 9 will be tomorrow, and we hope to see you there. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.